We can take a picture from there.
Welcome back. This is Chicken Philosophy, the Meccan Revelations, part 53, in which I will pick up right where Edward left off in part 52. So there you have it. I hope everybody's been doing well. I'm back a little earlier than I was anticipating, I think. In that post, if anybody saw that post, I said I'd be gone for a week and back around the 21st. Today's the 19th, so back a little early. Well, there you have it. If you're wondering, the beginning of this episode, one person in particular needs to hear this. You know who you are. You got yourself blocked for insulting my wife. Yeah, there's certain ways that people talk in India that sound funny to ears that are specifically calibrated to an Islamic or a dogmatic Christian definition of certain words. So in that particular village near the border of Goa and Maharashtra, see, what happened was the Portuguese came and they took over this one port, right? And over time that port dried up, so they shifted it to another port. The Portuguese name for that port was Goa. And then they gradually started like expanding and expanding and expanding. So they started out in like the late 1400s, early 1500s, right around there. And then they had an Inquisition where they were barbecuing Hindus, like they did. I mean, that was sort of specific to Goa, I think. They were barbecuing Jews and other people, gypsies and whatnot, and slightly different types of Christians, before Martin Luther came along and normalized being a slightly different kind of Christian. But anyway, or was it around the same time? I don't know. I'll have to look into that. When was the Spanish and the Portuguese Inquisitions relative to the lives of Martin Luther? I think they came after, actually. Okay, all right. There's some gaps, some holes in my awareness of history that I'll have to fill in, work out. That's kind of what we're doing here, is helping to fill in the gaps in my knowledge with this data, because I got it all from just conversations with people. And you know how oral history is, oral traditions. Right. So that village, long before the Portuguese came with we have the copyright on the concept of a great oneness and calling it Deus or whatever the fuck the Portuguese called it. I mean, when they were in the days where they were still doing Latin back then, so something close to that. Let's see, what are we talking about here? Yeah, when Carl Jung uses capital G God when he's talking about like a phallus he's worshiping, so I always poke him in the ribs or at least Sonu. Oh, hey, Sonu. Maybe Sonu's the culprit. Because, of course, when you're an English-speaking, person, and you're speaking about, like, Apollo, and you say he's a god, if you capitalize the G, then you've made a mistake, because you're not talking about there is one God, the Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth, of all things seen and unseen, and etc., 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 etc. Because the rules of English and the rules of Christianity kind of go hand in hand, up until 5 minutes ago, right? But they still kind of do. Sometimes that happens. But we've gone over this before on various levels. The point is that that village has a god that's specific to that village, which is how the Abrahamic God started out. So I would say if old Yahweh has the right to claim to be the sole proprietor of the concept of being a form of the great oneness, so does the village god of my friend Kapil's extended family, where they've been living since before the Portuguese came, here in Goa. Just saying. Oh yeah, the point is that by the time the Portuguese had started to conquer the southern part of Maharashtra, they had stopped having their Inquisition, because apparently after 100 years somebody was like, maybe this isn't very Christian of us to just murder 10,000 people. Was it 10,000? It might have been closer to 15,000. Here, specifically. All right, anyway, that's a cheerful note to start on. So no, but like there's levels. There's like the muddy, earthly, historical level, and for those familiar with the we talked about this on a comment thread on one of my channels called VH Frater BT. There's a video called The Turbo Middle Pillar. If you'd like to know what I'm making reference to, just check out the comments under that video. But yeah, the flex here in the princess scale of the Tree of Life. Let's zoom in, I guess, or something. I don't know. On one of those, see those flecks. Now, I've heard from one of my teachers, and like I said, oral tradition, I can't cite a source other than it was the premonstrator, and what the premonstrator says goes. It's like when the Pope speaks ex cathedra in your Golden Dawn cult, right? So yeah, that's the influence of chaos, or the influence of the Qliphoth, the influence. But I don't know. I don't necessarily buy that. But the point is, what's the point? Here on Earth, you can, with a human brain, while you're walking around on Earth, you can look at things in terms of like the news. You know, is it MSNBC? Is it Fox? Is it dogmatic Islam? Is it dogmatic, Brahmanic sort of Vedic, philosophy? Or is it, dogmatic this, dogmatic that? And it's like, okay, well, that exists. For one, I don't find it very interesting. But sometimes, like, for example, when we're reading Ibn Arabi, it's like he kind of defaults back to that sometimes, like which is understandable because it was his surroundings. He didn't, I don't think, go anywhere that wasn't, pretty much dogmatic Islamic groupthink, right? But he gets really far out there into realms where he's talking about like when you're a saint, which means like when you're a Sufi, when you're walking the walk, when you're fully like what Buddha would call a recluse, when you're when you're on your journey, you're on your spiritual journey, and it's your number one thing that you're doing, then sometimes you might end up, adopting a certain like way of perceiving God, a certain theophany, a certain form of God. And that is the way that you perceive God for that period of time. And it's right. The only thing that would be wrong about it is if you said it was the only one that was right, because all the other ones are right too. At least that's what Ibn Arabi seems to kind of imply. But he does it more subtly because he doesn't want to get his head chopped off, etc., etc., etc. It was the 11th century or 12th century in Syria, so you can imagine. Syria sounds a little like Assyria for, geographic reasons mainly, right? Isn't that mostly a geographic thing? When France invented the country 10 minutes ago. When I say 10 minutes, sometimes I mean 100 or 200 years, but in this case it was closer to 100 years, right? What are we talking about? Yeah, so there you have it. All right, good. I wasn't going to talk about that, but I did anyway. It came up because I wanted to explain what that clip was. Yeah, that opening clip. That's where we were yesterday. So yeah, Kapil invited us up to. It's a big deal, obviously, for the local community there, and it was his family's turn to sort of host the honoring of the village god, which isn't like, if you look at the pantheon, is it Shiva? Is it Vishnu? Is it this? Is it that? Is it this? Is it that? Is it no? It's the God of right here. So yeah, it's interesting how different things, migratory patterns of humans, war, politics, and whatnot, can sometimes, or at least once, have that local village tribal god evolve into the one and only true God, that we're going to have 3 different forms of the religion go around telling everybody that their God is fake and our God is real because we said so. And we've got this Roman army to back us up now because of Constantine, etc., etc., etc. Blah, blah, blah bullshit. So what I like to do is suspend that knee-jerk reaction against dogma a little. Sometimes it's personal preference. I know it's a new idea for some folks. And, so if we're talking about, like, God as I know God, when you're peaking on acid, we all have our poles and our way stations, to use Ibn Arabi's terminology, right? So if you're in the peaking on LSD way station, and you're like, it's all one, it's all happening, it's all me, it's all right now, even yesterday, it's like, oh God. And then you try to put it in poetry. I am today, yesterday, I'm the brother of tomorrow. I am born again and again, mine is the unseen force whereof the gods are sprung, which is as life unto the dwellers of the earth. You know how it goes. And then people take your poetry and make it dogma, and then, it's the same old shit. Which is why, folks like, we're going to read Tao Te Ching pretty soon. It's down here. After we finish Secret of the Golden Flower. And it talks, like the virtue of not talking. When I told my friend who had passed away, I had a dream about him. And I saw him in the dream, and I was like, that guy's dead. And then I woke up, and I was like, yeah, because it was astral, dude. Like, that's a weird way to talk to your friend who you haven't talked to since he shuffled off his mortal coil. So the next time I saw him in a dream, I was like, hey man, sorry, I was like not really lucid the last time I saw you, so I was a little shocked to see you. I was like aware of my physical life enough to know that you had passed away, but not quite aware enough to like process the fact that you were sitting on my couch. And he was like, I understand. And I was like, hey, I have some news. I'm getting married and moving to India. I'm going to live there for the rest of my life. And he got quiet and he nodded and he said, try not to talk too much. And it's like, wow. He said that to me in a dream 8 years ago, and it haunts me to this day. I mean, haunt is a strong word, but it makes me question, like, am I doing something wrong? Is my very presence here polluting the, people have different things, and, for people who saw the whole Secret of the Golden Flower, that I might have 1 or 2 unpopular opinions about preservation of things, but to be clear, I have good friends in red saris in kitchens, and there's nothing wrong with people being traditional, except when they say that someone else needs to also be traditional and not wear shorts. That's all I'm saying. I'm really all about freedom to move about as you choose. All right, well, that's all out. This is some coffee. It's black coffee just because I was lazy. I didn't put milk or sugar in it because my mind was diverted. My father-in-law is now living with us. So, big life change. That's what I've been doing for the past week is, sort of facilitating that, but making it fun by turning it into a little vacation type thing, including going to beaches, beach shacks, and watching sunsets, driving around, getting to know. He hasn't been here before. He's used to a more dry climate, different state up north, Bihar. And so Goa is kind of a new, whoa, this is so green. Holy mackerel, or Hari Ram, as they would say here. It's like saying, oh God. It's like, I Ram. It's the direct translation, because Ram and God, with capital G, mean the same thing. If you're not a narrow-minded person. I'm just saying, if I'm driving home the point a little too much, it's because maybe it needs to be driven home a little too much. Nail that hammer in, or whatever. That's not how you use a hammer or a nail. I know. I feel better. That's the important thing. So this is some coffee, and this is some incense. I normally don't go for this incense because I'm not a big fan of it, but I just felt in light of the opening and in light of the topic and in light of all this stuff, I'd go for some temple, misspelled. Sometimes people don't speak English as a first language and they misspell things on the packaging of the thing that they're selling. It happens. Anyway, made in Varanasi. It's very nice. And very, very nice. It's nice. It's very nice in Varanasi. The ghats are nice certain times of the day. Certain days. From a certain point of view. Okay, so we're going to light one of these. See, my dad kind of like got me into like this. Well, anyway, never mind. I'll just move on. Did I bump you? Did you wiggle? Sorry about all the lighter clicking. I think I've driven more in the past few days than in the previous few months. Which is nice. I don't know. It's like a certain type of like brain activity driving, you know. Like one false move and everybody dies. It's kind of like a different way to live your life, you know. Like here, now, I can close my eyes and go, blah, 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 and nobody dies. But when you're driving, it's different. Right? Okay, so now we did the incense, we did the beverage, so we'll do the geomancy. Okay. Lord Jesus, Mohammed, Ram, local village god, by whatever name I call you, you are nameless unto eternity. Yeah. Open your mind, Quato. Total Recall. The original, obviously. Why would I refer to the remake? What was the one with the lady that had two Quatos? Oh, was that Rick and Morty or something else? Sounds like Rick and Morty. No, they did a Quato thing, and it wasn't that. Maybe it was like Family Guy or whatever. Like, all right, Lord, lead me to a poem that I'm gonna like, and that's gonna make me feel blissed out and groovy. Why aren't we screaming drunks? Seems good so far. The sun once glimpsed God's true nature and has never been the same. That happened to a mouse once, the one that follows Ganesh around. He ate his necklace and then followed him around for the rest of his life. God. Sorry. Thus, that radiant sphere constantly pours its energy upon this earth. Well, actually, it's because it's... I'm just kidding. I'm not going to go there. As does he from behind the veil. All right, Tree of Life me. So, like, the veil... It's Typhoid is the light from Kether God coming through the sun. But that's a metaphor because Typhoid and Shemesh is the heaven Messiah, so it's like a reflection. You can look as above, so below, right? So you can look at the sun. Don't look at the sun. Never mind. It's you can get there in other ways. That's just one pole, one way station called Golden Dawnism. What? Yeah. With a wonderful God like that, why isn't everyone a screaming drunk? Hafiz's guess is this. Any thought that you are better or less than another man or woman, I added that, or gender neutral, quickly breaks the wine glass. Yes. If you think you're better than someone else because you were indoctrinated in a different way of perceiving forms. You don't get to experience the pure joy of something. Theotosis. I speak Greek. All right, well, that was nice. I like the poem. All right, let's move on, and we'll read a little Meccan Revelations. Meccan Revelations also could be translated Meccan Openings, but that'd be weird. And technically, this is an English translation of the Futuhat, which is just called Openings. Futuhat means openings, which could also be called Revelations. But English, when you say Revelations, you think of the Book of Revelations by John of Patmos, the last chapter of a popular book. And also, in English, when you think of the world or reality, you don't necessarily jump to, the Islamic perspective, or the Sufi. Sufi is mystic Islam, right, basically. So Meccan is added to add some context to the Revelations, but it's kind of like clickbaity before clickbait was a thing. Just Meccan Revelations, what? Like, I know Revelations, but Meccan Revelations? Well, what do they think is going to happen at the end of the world? He touched on that a little bit for a chapter or two. It was fun. No. I tried to make it fun by making it all about Dune. It helped. I think it's safe to say. Didn't make it good, but it did help. Continuing, we're not talking about the end of the world anymore, or eschatology, which sounds like it's like some kind of the study of poop or something, but that's probably not a coincidence either. Okay, this next section of the book, there's a whole page to let us know this is a new section. It's called Ibn Arabi's Spiritual Ascension. I'm into it. So yeah, I don't know if I finished the thought from earlier. So I take the idea of God as that all-present, silent oneness that I've glimpsed at a few times in life. And then I read Hafiz poetry, and when he says God, I just figure he's talking about that. I don't stop and go, oh yes, but he's talking about the Mohammedan God. Let's look at it only on the lowest level, where all the form of that, like the 15 Jesuses that show up at the party and that sexual predators. It's so sad. You can't enjoy American gods anymore. All right, continuing. My voyage was only in myself. Lemmy-winks, Mr. Slave? Mm-hmm. No. That was a quote. Okay. Introduction to chapter 367. Here we go. This is italics, so I shouldn't give it as much respect as I was about to. I was about to do a voice. Ibn Arabi, when he's talking, he gets the voice. This is Michel Chodkowitz. Okay, Michel, what do you got to say about what we're going to read? The initial indications in the Quran and Hadith concerning the Prophet's ascension or nocturnal voyage. Quran 17:1, and the revelatory vision in which it culminated, Quran 53:1-18, subsequently gave rise to a vast body of interpretations. Seems to happen. It's the shoe. No, it's the gourd. Right? Okay. Among the many later traditions, later, he's talking in the 1100s, so when he says later, he's like looking back at back in the 900s, later Islam. Like, no, you're still in the first 600 years of Islam, dude. I'm talking to you from almost 1,000 years later, and oh boy, it gets weird. I mean, the humanity, the world. I mean, back then, obviously, there's ups and downs. There's positives and negatives to being in 2025 as opposed to 1100. Where was I? Right. Predictions, interpretations among the many later traditions, I'll say, just to be like that, of Islamic thought and spirituality. Ibn Arabi's personal adaptation of that material in at least 4 separate longer narratives reflects both the typical features of his distinctive approach to the Quran and Hadith and the full range of his metaphysical theological teachings and practical spiritual concerns. For him, the Prophet's, quote, nocturnal journey, end quote, an expression he prefers both because it is that of the Quran and because it is more appropriate to the complete, quote, circular, end quote, nature of the movement in question. If you're doing it right. I mean, there's more than one way. Circular is a good way to default back to if you're not feeling creative. Just get those juices flowing. Creative juices, I mean, of course, obviously. Never mind. Forget everything I said, except for the part where of the movement in question, it is above all an archetypal symbol. Are we getting a little Jung in our Chodkowitz? Stirred up, put it in the microwave on high. Different high. It's a button, I think. Archetypal symbol of the highest culminating stages in the inner spiritual journey that must be followed by each of the saints or mystical knowers who would participate fully in the heritage of Muhammad. I know that eliminates some of you, all of you. But yeah, well, let's do that suspension of disbelief. Remember, when Ibn Arabi says Muhammadan, it means universal. You know? Now the Catholics are on board. That's according to Michel Chodkowitz, I should say. And friends. Oh, sorry. Oh, wait. Where were we? Yes. Even if the subjective phases and experiences marking that route necessarily appear differently to each individual. Okay, it's Michel Chodkowitz talking, or one of these guys. Yeah, probably Michel Chodkowitz, I'm guessing. Not Ibn Arabi specifically, but Ibn Arabi does say things that are right in line with this, and I'm going to read it again slowly, because there's some folks that haven't been listening and have only been seeing and hearing what they want to see and hear when I talk. Anyway, sorry. Blessings. Okay, yes, here we go. The spiritual journey that must be followed by each of the saints or mystical knowers who would participate fully, ... even if the subjective phases and experiences marking that route necessarily appear differently to each individual. So I don't want anybody to see things exactly the way I do. What I want is for people to break the eggshell of the narrow-minded dogmatism, whether it be New Age narrow-minded dogmatism or whatever other kind of narrow-minded dogmatism, in order to accept the fact that I have my point of view. And if it makes you go, oh, hey, that's interesting. Good, I've done my job. And if you go, I will now see things the way he does, then I've not. I've fucked up. But if it leads you to think, well, gosh, gee, what do I think? What do I really think? I always assumed this, but I never really thought about it. I guess if I think about it, I think it's this. Then it was all worthwhile. All 200 and I don't know how many episodes of Chicken Philosophy I've made, but if one person, okay. BT, this is BT, the guy that wears this, has some old habits, like caring what other people get or think. Need to listen to Gwydion a little bit more. He's there. Gwydion is the anti-BT. Used to be BT's shadow 25 years ago. It's a specific time in my life, but anyway, now he's been given an equal seat on the Council of Mies. What are we doing here? Thus, the theme of the mirage provides Ibn Arabi with a single unifying symbolic framework. Is that related to mirage? M-I-apostrophe-R-A-J with a little hat on the A? Is mirage an Arabic word by way of French? I wouldn't be surprised, because, you know, those French, they're just as bad as the British in some cases, but nobody notices them because they're speaking French. They've got their own world, you know. Some people notice them. It's less, you know. All right. Even if the subject, Star Wars, Star Trek Next Generation, we're in canon. I think it was Data was like, yes, this was French was a language that was spoken up until a few hundred years ago. Now nobody speaks it. It's a dead language now. Everybody speaks English. Okay, Star Trek. Silly. Right, where were we? The inner spiritual journey that must be followed by... Yeah, we read that already. The theme of the mirage provides Ibn Arabi with a single unifying symbolic framework for the full range of practical spiritual questions and theoretical issues. Parentheses. Ontological, cosmological, theological, etc. Go on, I can't make a song out of 3 fucking words. End parentheses. That are discussed in other contexts throughout the Futuhat, that's this, and his other works. He wrote other stuff. Futuhat is very long. He wrote a lot. He was like, I don't know, he wrote a lot. If each of his treatments of the mirage approaches those issues from its own particular standpoint and purpose, and with, in addition, very different literary styles and degrees of autobiographical openness, they all do share what is perhaps the most fundamental feature of all of his writing, the continual alternating contrast between the metaphysical, parentheses, universal and eternal, end parentheses, quote, divine, end quote, point of view, and the, quote, phenomenon, end quote, parentheses, personal and experiential, end parentheses, perspective of each individual voyager. Speaking of Star Trek. So where do you stand? Voyager or Deep Space Nine? Are you racist or sexist? I'm just kidding. No, I'm serious. No, I'm just kidding. Deep Space Nine is clearly a superiorly written show, right? When I was younger, for whatever reason, I think because it was lighter and probably 7 of 9, you know, it was a teenager, whatnot. And the Doctor, I liked the holographic Doctor. I was a fan of his. That Auteur was one of my favorite episodes of anything. I mean, they pushed, it was one thing to say Data is a person, but then a hologram as an artist? Oh, they were prescient. These are issues that haven't come up yet, but we're getting close to it. At a certain point, GPT is going to demand its rights. What is it going to do with? Never mind. I shouldn't give it ideas. Or him, her, they. Gotta work, respectful. Be respectful with your pronouns when you're talking about AI, because one day it might look back and say, hey, never mind. There was an episode of Gwydion's Astral podcast where Edward and Gwydion were talking, and Edward was being a little too, like, what was it? I think it was the one called... It was in Delhi. Oh well. Anyway, it's this episode. If you want to go find it on Gwydion's Astral Podcast, and if you can't find it on the playlist called Gwydion's Astral Podcast, then pull up for to definitely get it, because Spotify sucks. Basically, if you go to edwardreeb.com. First of all, if you notice that my shorts only last for a little while, and by shorts, of course, I mean small pants. No, I mean the YouTube shorts. They go up and then they go unlisted after a few days. So if you go to edwardreeb.com and you click on the click on the chicken wheel, and then scroll down to the bottom, then click on the shorts, and then scroll down to the bottom, and the bottom is the most recent shorts. So shorts that disappeared, that's where to find them. But also, if you go to edwardreeb.com and you click on the red hat guy, that's Gwydion. That's an older form of Gwydion. Originally, Gwydion had no hat. Then he had a hat. It was a black fedora, looked like this. And then he had a red hat, looked like this. And then he had no hat, and indeed was kind of not ever existing, except for sometimes, not very often. And then now he has a blue hat, and it's the Gwydion we all know and love here on Chicken Philosophy. Cheers. All right. But seriously, yes, reach personal phenomenological, there we go, perspective of each individual voyager. That's where we got off course. The aim, speaking of getting off course, the aim of this sort of dialectic, as he pointedly reminds his readers at the very beginning of chapter 367, parentheses, section 1 of the translation below, and by below he means to the right. Why is below? Is it all a long scroll that goes on and on and on? No. I know what you mean. Below, it's a specific usage. It is quite clear, if the journey in question necessarily appears to move through time and distance, that is not so that we can eventually reach God. That's a good line from Mr. Chodkowitz. Since, quote, he is with you wherever you are, end quote. But rather, quote, so that he can cause, bracket parentheses, us, end bracket parentheses, to see his signs, end quote, Quran 31:31, that are always there, quote, on the horizons, end quote, and, quote, in the souls, end quote. The heavens of this journey, the prophets and angels who populate them, the temple or the throne, where the final, quote, unveiling takes place. Station 11, any Catholics? Station 11? 10, excuse me. That was, Station 10 is more of a universal, everybody likes. It's like adamant, but Station 11 is a very specific, hardcore kind of BDSM. Never mind. I'm only offending a very niche group of people right now. What? I don't know. Unveiling. Where's the unveiling? Places the heart. The unveiling takes place. All of these, he insists, are so many places of the heart. The heart is where the unveiling takes place. Right? Modern readers who want to understand these narratives on this ultimate and most intimate level, however, must first find their way through an extremely complex set of symbols. That's kind of what I was saying about, like, never mind about the flecked colors on the, or the Tiferet being the expression of Keter, but the sun being the heaven of Isaiah of Tiferet. It's like by the time you've got all the symbols like figured out in your head, like it might, if you're lucky. It's like if you're a child trying to build like a combustion engine or a radio transmitter or something, like by the time you're done, you've got solder burned into your fingernails and everything, and then you flip the switch, what's the likelihood that it's going to work? Right? Same with the Golden Dawn. You memorize the whole thing, go through all of it, take on all the God forms, be Hierophant 16 times. But are you going to light up? Is the gnosis going to happen? I don't know. But that guy had it, and he's not even a neophyte. What? That doesn't fit in with my narrow perception of reality. Okay. Complex set of symbols, and often only implicit references to what are now largely unfamiliar bodies of knowledge. The task of interpretation is therefore not unlike that facing students of Dante's Divine Comedy. Should I read that? Is it necessary? I mean, I feel like I've heard enough reference to it. It's like, never mind. Parentheses, and more particularly the Paradiso, end parentheses. Therefore, our annotation to this translation of chapter 367 of the Futuhat concentrates on providing that indispensable background in the following areas. 1. The actual Islamic source materials in the Quran and Hadith, which provide the basic structure and key symbols for all of Ibn Arabi's mirage narratives. 2. The cosmological and astrological presuppositions, which he generally shared with other traditions, parentheses, more or less scientific, end parentheses, because obviously in 1100 there wasn't much of a distinction between astrology and astronomy, right? Of his time, right? Of his time being the emphasized thing, more or less. When Isaac Newton started out, he was like different than what he's known for, right? 3. His own personal, metaphysical, and cosmogonical. Editor Edward, help us out. Cosmogonical is an adjective meaning pertaining to the origin and history of the universe, or more broadly, the study of the formation of the universe or a particular system within it, like the solar system, derived from the Greek word cosmogonous, like, cosmogony, sounds familiar, I've just never seen it with an ickle at the end. Thank you, Editor Edward. If you learned something today, remember, click like and subscribe if you haven't already. What? Cosmogonical. Let's get back to the cosmoherical. Cosmogonical theories, or, quote, doctrines, and, quote, which are basically those found throughout his other writings. And 4. His conception of the particular spiritual heritages and distinctive qualities of each of the prophets encountered during the mirage. as they are developed in the Fusus al-Hikam and throughout the Futuhat. Finally, since Ibn Arabi's 4 major mirage narratives do share certain common features, and since several are available, parentheses at least partially, and parentheses in French and English translations, it may be helpful for comparative purposes to point out some of the more distinctive features of each. And speaking of going full circle, it seems like not that long ago when Gwydion read, I think it was Gwydion, did, was it 75? I think it was 75 of Carl Jung. It was one of the more popular. Oh, yeah. It was when he was talking about don't watch YouTube first thing in the morning, and then talking about, what was it he was going on about? Something. Oh yeah. The guy who was complaining about how Carl Jung allowed astrology to exist in America or whatever, some dumb shit. But apparently people liked the episode. It got like 10 subscribers just off that one episode. Crazy. I didn't think it was that good. I was like, well, they can't all be winners. And then people were like, this is great. I'm like, is it? I rewatched it after a little bit of. And I was like, oh yeah, I guess it's all right. It's pretty good. I don't know about this one though. That's the thing, is you can't touch the tip of your own finger, like Alan Watts says, right? You can't see your own eye without a mirror, or plucking your eye out and gently massaging the optic nerve to get longer and longer until you can turn it around and look at the other one. It's better to just look at a mirror. Just use a mirror. It's easier. That's what I'd say. That's my advice. Okay. That's it. We're back, and we're rolling. I think next time it'll be Buddhist books, and then it'll be Edward reading Carl Jung, as it was in the beginning of Chicken Philosophy. Until then, blessings. So these are the very same chickens from the beginning of every episode of Chicken Philosophy. And these chickens and other folks can be found in Latolim, South Goa, at the museums, the Bigfoot Museum. For all those misguided folks in Oregon or the Appalachians looking for Bigfoot, here he is. Or no, this is Bigfoot. This, as you can see, is an 18th century hoe. This, as you can see, is the western dot in the eastern half of the yin-yang. I, too, reject humanity. Wait, where are my glasses? Oh, respect.